Hello everyone, welcome to section 6 titled Adding Competitive Elements. In this section we will first start looking at adding a base for achievements, where we will add a competitive manager that updates and awards achievements. We will then start adding the achievements on iOS, creating a controller to interface with the Game Center. Next we will add achievements to Android, updating the Google Play Store and adding a controller to interface with it. Then we will create a base for leaderboards by updating our competitive manager to make it update the leaderboard. Next we will start adding the iOS leaderboards by updating iTunes Connect and updating the iOS controller to interface with the Game Center. Finally, we will add leaderboards to Android, where we will update the Google Play services with the leaderboards as well as the Android controller. This video is titled Creating a Base for Achievements. And in this video, we're going to be creating the competitive manager which controls achievement progress. For Android and iOS, there are two different services used for achievements and leaderboards. On iOS, there's the Game Center, and on Android, there's Google Play services. When developing our game, we need to have a unified way to update the achievements and leaderboards which will update either service based on the current platform. To do this, we will create a competitive manager which will have a controller for a specific platform defined. If the platform is Android, we'll create an Android version of the controller, and if it's iOS, we'll create an iOS version. Before we create the competitive manager, let's create the achievement class. This class will serve as a method of keeping the progress locally on the device. First, go to game.shared and add a new folder. Name it competitive. Then add a new class in this folder. We'll name it achievement. First, make the class a public class. For the achievement, we will only need 3 properties. First, an ID for the achievement. This is different based on the platform. Then we need a single for the percentage that the achievement is complete. Finally, we need a boolean for whether or not the achievement has been achieved. Next, we're going to add a constructor for the achievement. The constructor has a parameter for the ID. It will be used to load the progress and achieve boolean from the device's storage. First, we will set the ID. Then we're going to add an if define for Android and iOS. For Android, we're going to get the preference manager like we did for the number of lives when purchasing. Make sure to add the using for Android.content, as well as Android.preferences and engine.android. To get the shared preferences, we use the preference manager.getDefault shared preferences with the main activity as the context. Don't forget for the usings to add an if define as well. So once we have the preference manager, we get the percentage complete from the preferences using the ID and a percentage string. We'll set the default as 0. Then we get the achieve boolean, which uses preferences.getBoolean, again with the ID, but this time using an achieved bit for the key. For the achieved boolean, we use preferences.getBoolean using the ID, and we set the default to false. Next, we'll add the iOS version. For iOS, we'll use NSUserDefaults again, and use the .floatForKey method. Don't forget the using in the if define. Now we're going to add a save method. This method will be called every time the achievement changes progress, and it will save the values to the device. For this method, we're going to need to add another if define for Android and iOS. We'll start with Android. As before, we'll get the shared preferences, and then create a new editor using preferences.edit. Then we put the percentage progress into the editor as well as the achieve boolean. We'll call apply to save the values. Now for iOS. For iOS, we'll set the float and the bool for the percentage and achieved, and then we'll call synchronize to save the value. Now we're going to add methods to change the progress of the achievement. First, we're going to add a setProgress method with a parameter for the percentage. In this method, we'll first set the percentage complete, and then clamp it between 0 and 1. We now need to add a constant for the epsilon for a float. We need to do this as opposed to using the predefined one because the number does not function correctly on older ARM devices, such as the iPhone 5. So, go to your Solution Explorer, and in Base, open up the constants file. In here, we're going to add a new double. Create a new double called epsilon and set it to this value. Now go back to the achievement class. We now check if the achievement is complete, and if it is, we set achieve to true. Finally, we call save. Next, we're going to add an increment progress method. which has a parameter for the percentage to increment by. In the body, we'll just call set progress with the percentage progress plus the percentage complete. Finally, we're going to add a reset progress method. This method sets the percentage complete to 0 and then calls save. Now we'll add our competitive controller. This will be an abstract class used to call the relevant method for each platform. So, in the competitive folder, we're going to add a new class. Name it competitive controller. Make it a public abstract class. First, we're going to add an abstract void called connect, with a parameter of an action that returns a boolean for when it's complete. Next, we'll add another abstract void called update achievement with an achievement as a parameter. This will update the given achievement on the service and award them if they've been achieved. Then add an abstract void called view achievements. This will bring up the achievement screen on the device. Now we can add our competitive manager. So in the competitive folder, add a new class. Name it competitive manager. Make it a public class. First, we're going to add some fields. Add a boolean called connected, which we'll use to check if the manager is connected to the service. Then we add an array of achievements. Finally, add a competitive controller called platform controller. Next, we're going to make the class a singleton to add a private static reference of the manager and a property that retrieves or creates the manager. Finally, add a property to retrieve the platform controller. Next, we're going to add a private constructor. This constructor will create a competitive controller based on the platform. So just add an if define for Android and iOS for now, as we will be creating these in the next 2 videos. Next, we're going to add a method called loadData with a parameter for the achievement IDs. In the body, we'll create a new array of achievements and create each one with the ID. Next, we're going to add a getAchievement method with an int for the index. This is just in case we ever need to retrieve an achievement. First, we'll check if the index is out of bounds, and if it is, we'll throw an index out of range exception. Otherwise, we just return the achievement at the given index. Now we're going to add a connect method. This method will connect the controllers to their service. If we're already connected, we just return. Otherwise, we'll call connect on the controller, and when complete, we set connected to the result. Next, we're going to add an update platform achievement method with a parameter for the achievement. This method is used to update the achievement for the platform-specific service. If we're not connected, we will return. Otherwise, we call update achievement on the platform controller with the achievement. Now we're going to add the methods that will change the achievement progress. First, we'll start with the increment achievement progress method, which has an int for the index and the single for the progress. If the achievement's already been achieved, we just return. Otherwise, we increment the progress on the achievement and then call update platform achievement with the achievement. Next, we add a set achievement progress with parameters for the index and the progress to set. Similar to the above method, we'll check if the achievement's already been achieved, and if it has, we return. Otherwise, we call set progress on the achievement and then update the platform achievement. Then, add a method called reset progress with an int for the index as a parameter. In this method, we will return if the achievement's already been achieved, as before. Otherwise, we reset the progress of the given achievement and update the platform. Finally, we'll add a view achievements method, which will view the achievements on the platform. First, we'll check if we're connected, and if we're not, we'll return. Otherwise, we call view achievements on the platform controller. The next step is to update the game so that we can actually increment the achievements. We're going to add achievements for completing the first level as well as completing all levels. To do this, we need to update the level complete state, but first we need to add the achievements. So open up the constants file. First, we'll add the achievement IDs. Add a static read-only string array and call it Android achievement IDs, and for now initialize it with 2 empty strings. In video 3, we will populate this data. Then we add another static read-only string array, this time for the iOS achievements. Again initialized with 2 empty strings. Next, we're going to add 2 ints, one for each index of the achievement. We'll add a const int called achievement finish level and we'll set it to 0. This achievement is for finishing a level. Then we add another const int called achievement finish all levels, which is the achievement for finishing all the levels in the game. We also need to make a quick change to the level controller so that we can get the number of levels. So in your Solution Explorer, open up the level controller. In here we're going to add a new property called number of levels, which just gets the level count. Now we're going to add the code to update the achievements. In your Solution Explorer, go to States and open up the level complete state. In the onEnter, we will set the achievement progress on the finished level achievement, and we'll set it to 1 so that it achieves the achievement. Then go to the onComplete shown. In here, after we change the level, we're going to set the achievement progress for the Finish All Levels achievement based on the current level index divided by the number of levels. This will set the correct percentage complete. The final step is to add a loading state. This state will be used to connect the competitive controller as well as the analytics manager in the next section. So in the state folder, add a new class. Name the class loading state. Make the class a public class that inherits from the state class. Then we're going to override all the methods and get rid of the not implemented exceptions. So that includes the onEnter method, the update method, the onExit method, and the dispose method. Now go to the onEnter method. First we're going to force active the full screen message to say loading. Then we're going to create a string array for the achievements. Then add an if define for Android and iOS. We're going to use this if define to set the IDs for the achievements. So if it's Android, we'll set the achievement IDs to use the Android achievement IDs and the constants. Otherwise for iOS we use the iOS achievement IDs. Next, we call load data on the competitive manager and pass in the achievement IDs. We then tell the competitive manager to connect. Finally, we get the full screen message to change to blank text, and once that's complete, we'll change the state to the menu state. Finally, we need to make the game start in the loading state. So, let's open up the Zippy game class in the base folder. Go to the load content method, and in here where we create the new menu state, instead create a new loading state. So in summary, we now have a base for the achievements. We have a competitive manager which interfaces with the relevant service to update